At a prestigious middle school, a hopeful black mother arrives to enroll her son. But after hours of waiting, the receptionist greets her only with cold stares and thinly veiled contempt. The insults from staff soon escalate into cruel accusations, until she is dragged into the security office and searched like a criminal. What none of them realize is that they've chosen the wrong woman to humiliate, and today they're about to learn a lesson they'll never forget. Before we dive into the story, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Maya Johnson adjusted her rearview mirror as she pulled her 12-year-old Honda Civic into the parking lot of Prestridge Academy. Her car looked like a rust bucket among the gleaming Bentleys, Mercedes and Teslas, but Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement rather than intimidation. She had been recently transferred here for work, and while her husband was still wrapping up business matters back home before joining them, she felt optimistic about this new chapter. After months of research, she was convinced this was the perfect place for her 12-year-old son Marcus to thrive. The imposing Gothic architecture stretched before her like something from an old English university. Ivy crawled up red brick walls while students in crisp uniforms moved with practiced confidence across manicured lawns. The brass plaque near the main entrance gleamed, "Where leaders are made," established 1873. On a freestanding poster by the door, a line in small caps read, "Proud recipient of U.S. Department of Education funding for STEM enrichment and IDA Part B services." A glossy brochure nearby boasted that Prestridge partners with the district to deliver federally supported special education services. Maya smiled, clutching her carefully prepared folder. A good school could transform a child's entire future, and she was determined to give Marcus every opportunity possible. The main reception area took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from coffered ceilings, while oil portraits of distinguished alumni gazed down from mahogany-paneled walls. Well-dressed couples sat in leather chairs, their voices carrying the easy confidence of people accustomed to getting what they wanted. Maya approached the reception desk, her smile bright and hopeful. "Good morning," she said cheerfully to the woman behind the polished granite counter. "I'm here to submit an application for the 7th grade program, Maya Johnson." Jennifer Walsh looked up from her computer screen, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light as she tilted her head. Her eyes traveled slowly from Maya's face down to her clothing, lingering on several small but noticeable paint stains in various bright colors on her navy blue blouse. Jennifer's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Well, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Look what wandered in off the street. Applications require scheduled appointments, sweetie. Did you bother to make one, or did you just assume you could waltz in here whenever you felt like it?" Maya's smile faltered slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "I called last week and was told walk-ins were welcome during business hours. I have all the required documentation prepared." Jennifer's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Things change around here faster than you might be used to, honey. You'll need to take a seat over there and wait your turn." She waved dismissively toward uncomfortable-looking chairs near the window, then immediately turned back to her computer screen. Jennifer's voice carried deliberately across the reception area. "Some people just don't understand how things work in civilized society." Her colleague nodded, both women shooting pointed looks in Maya's direction. Maya settled into the rigid chair, her stomach sinking as she noticed something that made her heart ache. She was the only person of color in the entire reception area. Every other prospective parent was white, impeccably dressed, and being treated like visiting royalty. Her eyes tracked the pattern. A couple in matching country club attire arrived, were greeted by name, and whisked away within minutes. A single father in an expensive suit received the red carpet treatment, with Jennifer personally escorting him to meet with admissions. The large clock on the wall seemed to tick louder with each passing minute. Maya approached the desk again, her voice still polite despite the growing knot in her stomach. "Excuse me, I was wondering about the wait time." Jennifer's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with irritation. "I told you to sit down and wait. We don't operate on your schedule here. This is a serious institution, not some community center where you can just demand immediate service." Maya returned to her seat, her professional training kicking in. She recognized the pattern, had seen it in her work countless times. But she thought of Marcus, brilliant and eager, and forced herself to stay calm. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. Her feet began to ache in her professional heels. Around her, families continued to arrive and be immediately accommodated while she remained invisible. 2 hours passed before an unexpected voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me," a distinguished woman with silver hair and kind eyes addressed Jennifer directly. "I think this lady was here before all of us, Mrs. Elizabeth Carter's cream-colored suit and diamond earrings marked her as someone whose opinion mattered at this institution." Jennifer's face flushed red, her carefully maintained superiority cracking. "Well, there must have been some confusion about her paperwork," Jennifer stammered, shooting a venomous look at Maya. "I suppose I can squeeze her in now if she's still interested." Maya rose on unsteady legs, her body stiff from the prolonged wait. "Thank you so much," she whispered to Mrs. Carter, her voice thick with gratitude. "Don't mention it, dear," Mrs. Carter replied softly. "Everyone deserves to be treated with basic courtesy." Jennifer led Maya down a hallway, lined with photographs of graduating classes stretching back over a century. The faces in the frames were overwhelmingly white, with only scattered students of color in recent years. Maya's jaw tightened, but she focused on the opportunity ahead. The admissions office was designed to intimidate. Robert Hayes sat behind a mahogany desk the size of a dining room table, surrounded by diplomas and leather-bound volumes. At 50 he had perfected the art of appearing welcoming while radiating superiority. He didn't look up from his papers. "Mrs. Johnson, is it?" His tone suggested mild annoyance at the interruption. Maya placed her carefully organized folder on his desk. "Yes, thank you for seeing me. My son Marcus is currently in 6th grade, and we're hoping he can join your 7th grade program next fall." Hayes finally looked up, his eyes immediately cataloging every detail of Maya's appearance. His gaze lingered on the paint stains with obvious distaste. Only now did Maya realize what Jennifer had been fixated on. The colorful splotches from her morning volunteer work teaching art to children at the shelter suddenly felt like scarlet letters under his disapproving stare. "I see," he said slowly, distaste evident in every syllable. "And what exactly makes you think Prestridge Academy would be an appropriate fit for your son?" "We maintain very specific standards here." Maya's heart pounded, but she launched into her prepared explanation. Marcus's academic achievements, his exceptional performance in science and mathematics, his need for intellectual challenge. She slid document after document across the desk, report cards showing straight A grades, standardized test scores in the 99th percentile, glowing letters of recommendation. Hayes examined each document like he was investigating a fraud. "These grades are quite impressive," he said, though his tone dripped with skepticism. "Tell me, are you absolutely certain these haven't been artificially enhanced somehow? Grade inflation is quite common in certain school districts, particularly those serving less affluent populations." Maya's hands clenched beneath the desk. "Those are official transcripts sent directly from his current school. Marcus has earned every one of those grades." Hayes set down the papers with a dismissive gesture. "Academic records are just one piece of the puzzle. We would need extensive additional documentation. Detailed financial records, employment verification, proof of community standing. This is a very exclusive institution." Maya reached into her folder, producing each requested document with methodical precision. Hayes's frustration grew visible as it became clear she had anticipated every objection. Her mortgage papers, tax returns, employment verification letter from the U.S. Department of Education identifying her as a regional civil rights director, though carefully avoiding specifics about her department. Hayes glanced repeatedly toward the door, his impatience obvious. Finally, his eyes lit up with what he clearly believed was inspiration. "I notice that you're here alone today," he said, his voice taking on a predatory edge. "At Prestridge Academy, we strongly value traditional family structures. The vast majority of our parent conferences involve both parents. Where exactly is your husband in all of this?" Maya felt her chest tighten. "My husband is currently handling some business matters out of state. He'll be joining us here soon. I thought it would be efficient to begin the application process while he finishes his responsibilities." Hayes waved his hand like he was swatting away a fly. "Yes, well, that's a common story we hear. Absent fathers, broken families, mothers trying to handle responsibilities they're not equipped for." His eyes lingered on the paint stains with obvious disgust. "Single-parent households consistently produce children with behavioral and academic challenges. It's simply statistical fact. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Her knuckles went white as she gripped the arms of her chair. Mr. Hayes, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. He's a dedicated father who takes his family responsibilities very seriously. These assumptions about our family structure are inappropriate and completely inaccurate. Hayes leaned back, his smile cold and calculated. Mrs. Johnson, let me be frank with you. I've been in this business for 20 years and I can recognize certain patterns. He gestured broadly at her appearance. You strike me as someone who's gotten used to demanding special treatment, playing the victim card when things don't go your way. You show up here looking like you just crawled out of some art therapy session for troubled adults, driving a car that belongs in a junkyard, and expect us to roll out the red carpet. Maya's vision blurred as rage surged through her system. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But Hayes was just getting started, his voice growing more vicious with each word. The truth is, people like you see institutions like Prestridge Academy as golden tickets to a better life. You think if you can somehow get your kid through our doors, it'll magically transform him from just another inner-city statistic into someone respectable. But here's the reality check you need. Excellence can't be faked, class can't be bought, and breeding will always tell in the end. Maya shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. How dare you, she whispered, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. How dare you make assumptions about my family, my background, or my son's character based on nothing more than your own prejudiced stereotypes? Hayes leaned forward, his expression shifting from mild disdain to open hostility. I'm making observations based on 20 years of experience dealing with people exactly like you. Single mothers from broken homes, probably living off government assistance, looking for handouts and special treatment. His eyes glittered with malice. You want to know what I think? I think your husband doesn't exist. I think you're just another welfare queen trying to scam your way into elite circles. The words struck Maya like physical blows, her ears rang. Her hands shook. My husband is a colonel in the United States Army, currently serving his country overseas. How dare you dishonor his service with your ignorant assumptions? Hayes's laugh was harsh and mocking. Oh, now we're playing the military card. How convenient. Let me guess, he's deployed somewhere classified and can't be reached for verification. That's rich, even for someone like you. Maya's chest heaved as she struggled to breathe. Every fiber of her being wanted to lash out, but years of professional training held her back. I will not sit here and listen to you insult my family any longer. I want to speak with your supervisor immediately. Sit down, Hayes commanded sharply, pressing a button on his desk. You're getting agitated and confrontational, which frankly doesn't surprise me given your obvious background. This meeting is over. The door burst open as two security guards appeared. Hayes's voice carried loudly, performing for anyone within earshot. Gentlemen, Mrs. Johnson became verbally aggressive when we explained our admission standards. She raised her voice, made threatening gestures, and showed clear signs of emotional instability. Please escort her to the security office until she calms down. Maya stared in disbelief as her world tilted sideways. This is insane. I haven't threatened anyone. I simply stood up and asked to speak with a supervisor after being subjected to racist attacks on my family. Security Chief Mike Thompson was built like a linebacker, his presence filling the doorway. His younger partner, Steve Martinez, looked uncomfortable but followed Thompson's lead as they flanked Maya. Ma'am, you need to come with us right now, Thompson said, his hand resting on his radio. We've received reports of threatening behavior and emotional outbursts. For everyone's safety, we need to conduct a security evaluation. Maya looked around the office in amazement. In the staff members' faces, she saw not concern or confusion, but satisfaction. They were watching a predictable drama unfold exactly as expected. This is racial profiling, pure and simple, she said clearly, wanting her words heard by everyone present. I'm being removed because I stood up for my family when subjected to discriminatory treatment. Thompson's grip on her arm was firm as he guided her toward the door. Ma'am, playing the race card won't help your situation. We're following standard protocols for disruptive individuals. The walk through the hallways felt like a perp walk. Staff members and visiting parents stopped their conversations to stare as Maya was marched past. The whispers followed in her wake, carrying assumptions and judgments. The security office was small and windowless, located in the basement. Thompson closed the door with deliberate finality and gestured to a metal chair facing a desk covered with security monitors. The setup was designed to make visitors feel trapped and surveilled. "Let's start with some basic questions," Thompson said, settling behind his desk with practiced confidence. "What exactly were you hoping to accomplish here today?" Maya stared at him with a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. "I was hoping to submit my son's application for admission, just like every other parent who came here today." Thompson exchanged a meaningful look with his partner. "See, that's where your story starts to fall apart. Parents who actually belong here don't cause disruptions in admissions meetings. They don't threaten staff members when asked reasonable questions." "I never threatened anyone," Maya said, her voice rising. "Mr. Hayes made racist assumptions about my family and insulted my husband's military service. When I defended my family and asked to speak with a supervisor, he had me dragged down here. That's not how we heard it." Thompson replied smoothly, clearly relishing his authority. "According to Mr. Hayes, you became increasingly agitated and hostile when unable to provide satisfactory documentation. You raised your voice, made threatening gestures, and showed signs of potential violence." Thompson leaned forward, his expression becoming more aggressive. "Now I'm going to need to search your personal belongings. We have reports suggesting you might be carrying weapons or other dangerous items. People in your demographic often resort to extreme measures when they don't get what they want." Maya felt the room spin. "Weapons? Have you completely lost your minds? I'm a mother trying to enroll her child in school. What possible weapons could I have in a purse?" "Ma'am, consent isn't required under our safety protocol," Thompson said, incorrectly, as he dragged her bag across the desk despite her protests. Maya watched in horrified fascination as Thompson dumped her purse contents onto the desk with unnecessary force. Her worn wallet hit the surface first, followed by her cracked smartphone, paint-stained tissues, her car keys with Marcus's handmade keychain, and a small notebook tracking her son's activities. "What do we have here?" Thompson said with theatrical suspicion, holding up the tissues like evidence. "These look suspicious. Are you involved in vandalism, drug activity? What kind of substances have you been handling?" "They're tissues," Maya replied, her voice flat with disbelief. "I volunteer at a children's shelter teaching art classes to orphan kids. That's watercolor paint from this morning's session." Steve Martinez shifted uncomfortably as his supervisor continued the degrading search. The young man had taken this job hoping to contribute to a safe educational environment, not participate in obvious harassment. "People like you always have convenient cover stories," Thompson continued, examining Maya's wallet with forensic thoroughness. "Community volunteer work, helping disadvantaged children, it's all part of the performance, isn't it? You probably saw this place as an opportunity to scope out wealthy families for some kind of scam." Maya's hands trembled with rage as she watched this stranger violate her privacy. The casual cruelty was almost as enraging as the racist assumptions driving every aspect of his behavior. "Let me tell you what I see here," Thompson said, warming to his theme. "I see someone who doesn't belong in a place like this, someone who thought they could fake their way past our security with a sob story and forged documents. Street artists, welfare mothers, people looking to cause trouble for decent families who've earned their place in society." Thompson looked up with a cruel smile that revealed years of practiced malice. "You want to know the truth? You people always think you can intimidate honest Americans with threats about discrimination and civil rights. But this is a private institution. We have every right to protect our community from individuals who don't meet our standards." As Thompson spoke, his thick fingers found the small zippered compartment in Maya's wallet where she kept her federal identification. The leather badge holder was worn from daily use, but the gold seal remained bright and official. Without paying attention to what he was holding, Thompson continued his monologue. "The bottom line is places like Prestridge Academy aren't for people like you," he said, absently opening the badge holder while maintaining aggressive eye contact. "We cater to families with actual achievements, real wealth, genuine class, not wannabes who show up covered in paint, thinking they can buy respectability for their kids." Thompson glanced down at the identification card in his hands. Every word died in his throat as if someone had flipped a switch. His face went through rapid color changes, from ruddy to pale to sickly green, as he read and reread the official designation. The silence stretched endlessly before he managed to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Maya Johnson, Regional Civil Rights Director, U.S. Dept. of Education. The badge holder slipped from Thompson's nerveless fingers and hit the floor with a sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot. Martinez leaned forward to see what had caused his supervisor's transformation, his own face going ashen as he read the identification. Maya stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled, like a judge rising to deliver an unappealable sentence. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had spent years enforcing federal civil rights compliance, negotiating resolution agreements, and referring egregious cases to the Department of Justice. "Gentlemen," she said with deadly calm, "you have just committed multiple federal crimes by unlawfully detaining and conducting an illegal search of a government inspector. You have also provided me with extensive first-hand evidence of systematic discrimination that violates numerous civil rights statutes." Thompson's mouth opened and closed wordlessly as the full implications crashed over him. In 30 seconds he had gone from feeling completely in control to facing potential federal criminal charges. The woman he had been taunting wasn't some helpless victim. She was one of the most powerful education officials in the state. The door burst open as Principal Patricia Whitfield rushed in, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, her face flushed with panic. Someone had called with urgent news about a critical situation, but she clearly hadn't grasped the scope until she saw Maya's federal identification on the floor. "Dr. Johnson," she gasped, her voice cracking with terror, "I am so profoundly sorry. This behavior is completely unacceptable and absolutely does not represent the values of Prestridge Academy. These individuals were acting without my knowledge or authorization." Maya bent down to retrieve her identification, taking her time to let the situation's weight settle on everyone present. "Mrs. Whitfield, I presume. I've heard about Prestridge Academy's reputation for excellence. I'm curious how that excellence extends to your hiring practices and institutional oversight. As a recipient of federal financial assistance, including IDEA Part B equitable services, Prestridge is subject to Title VI and Section 504 compliance reviews by the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. I'm initiating one now." Whitfield's hands shook visibly as she tried to regain control of a situation spiraling beyond her ability to manage. In 30 years of educational administration, she had never faced a crisis of this magnitude. Having a federal inspector experience systematic discrimination at her institution was a nightmare that could result in loss of federal funds, a court-enforceable resolution agreement, or a DOJ consent decree. "Dr. Johnson, please, this absolutely does not reflect our school's actual policies or values," she said, words tumbling over each other in desperate rush. "I will personally conduct a comprehensive investigation, and I guarantee swift and appropriate disciplinary action against everyone involved." Maya regarded the principal with cool analysis, like someone who had investigated dozens of similar situations. "Mrs. Whitfield, you were present during the 2 hours I spent being systematically ignored in your lobby. You walked past me multiple times while families who arrived after me were immediately accommodated. This isn't about rogue employees. What I experienced appears to be institutional discrimination operating at every level." The principal's professional facade crumbled as she realized Maya had been documenting every aspect of her experience. "I had no idea there were any delays. If there was confusion about procedures, I'm certain it was an innocent misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Maya repeated, her voice carrying skeptical precision. "I suppose Mr. Hayes's comments about my background, his assumptions about single mothers, and his characterization of me as someone from the gutters were also innocent misunderstandings." Whitfield shot venom at Hayes, who appeared in the doorway looking physically ill. His 20-year career had effectively ended, and he was beginning to understand the consequences might extend far beyond termination. "Dr. Johnson," Whitfield continued desperately, "I want to extend the most sincere apology on behalf of Prestridge Academy and our entire board. We would be deeply honored to accept Marcus immediately, with complete academic scholarship covering tuition, fees, books and activities. No entrance examination, no waiting period, full integration into our gifted program. Maya had encountered similar offers throughout her career. When institutions realized they had been caught discriminating, their immediate instinct was damage control through generous settlements and promises of reform, always with implicit expectations of silence. Miss Whitfield, Maya said with finality, your offer is both insulting and completely inadequate. What happened today wasn't a series of misunderstandings. It was systematic discrimination that I personally observed and experienced over several hours. She paused to let her words sink in completely. My primary concern is determining how many other families have been subjected to this same treatment, without having the resources, knowledge or authority to effectively challenge it. Whitfield's face went completely white as the full implications became clear. A federal investigation wouldn't limit itself to today's events. It would involve comprehensive examination of admission records going back years, staff training materials, internal communications. Every questionable decision, every pattern of exclusion would be scrutinized under federal oversight. Dr. Johnson, certainly we can resolve this privately and professionally, she pleaded, her composure completely abandoned. Prestridge Academy has served this community with distinction for over a century. A public federal investigation would be devastating not just for the institution but for all the students and families who depend on us. Maya began methodically collecting her belongings, moving with calm efficiency. Mrs. Whitfield, in my 15 years as a federal education inspector, I've learned that discriminatory institutions don't reform themselves because of private conversations or generous settlements. They change because of public accountability, federal oversight, and serious legal consequences. She retrieved her phone and began photographing the security office, her scattered belongings, and everyone present. Each image would become part of a federal case file that could result in criminal charges, substantial penalties, and court-mandated supervision. I will be opening a comprehensive federal investigation into Prestridge Academy's admission practices, staff training protocols, disciplinary procedures, and compliance with federal civil rights legislation, she announced with full governmental authority. I will also refer this matter to the U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Educational Opportunities Section for potential enforcement, and if criminal violations are indicated, to the FBI for investigation. The room fell silent, except for Whitfield's labored breathing and distant electronic humming of monitors. Hayes had gone gray, gripping the doorframe to avoid collapse. Thompson looked like he was calculating whether immediate resignation might minimize his legal exposure. Maya paused at the door, turning back one final time. For what it's worth, Mrs. Whitfield, Marcus will not be attending Prestridge Academy under any circumstances. Based on everything I've witnessed today, this institution is fundamentally unworthy of any child whose parents value character, integrity, and basic human dignity. Maya walked through the marble corridors for the final time, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, anger, and steely determination. She had arrived hoping to secure the perfect educational environment for her brilliant son. Instead, she had uncovered a culture of elitism and systematic racism that had probably been damaging children and families for generations. The evening news led with a story that would dominate headlines for weeks and spark a national conversation about discrimination in elite educational institutions. Federal education inspectors subjected to systematic racism at prestigious private school was just the beginning of a media firestorm that would expose decades of institutionalized bias. Within hours, the story exploded across every social media platform, with hashtags trending nationally and internationally. Cell phone video of Maya being escorted to the security office went viral across every platform. The image of a dignified professional being treated like a criminal simply for trying to enroll her son struck a chord that reverberated far beyond the immediate community. By morning, Prestridge Academy's phone lines were completely overwhelmed with calls from reporters, outraged parents, civil rights organizations, government officials, and concerned citizens demanding answers and accountability. The school's carefully cultivated image of refined educational excellence had been replaced overnight with a reputation for institutional racism that would take decades to overcome. Hayes was placed on immediate administrative leave following Maya's departure. Within weeks, after an internal review confirmed his conduct, his 2-decade career ended in dismissal and potential federal charges. Thompson was also suspended without pay pending investigation and was later removed from his post as findings accumulated. Even Jennifer Walsh found herself suddenly unemployed as the institution desperately attempted to distance itself from anyone connected to the expanding scandal. Whitfield managed to survive 3 more days before submitting her resignation in complete professional disgrace. The Board of Trustees, facing plummeting enrollment, threatened lawsuits, and a federal investigation that seemed to expand hourly, had no alternative but to accept her departure and begin searching for leadership capable of rebuilding from the ground up. The comprehensive federal investigation revealed exactly what Maya had suspected. Prestridge Academy's admission records documented a clear pattern of discrimination stretching back decades, carefully disguised behind subjective evaluation criteria and coded language that had nothing to do with academic merit. Qualified students of color had been systematically excluded through deliberately ambiguous standards about cultural fit and family values. Financial aid had been disproportionately awarded to white families, even when minority applicants had greater need and superior qualifications. Staff training materials contained explicit guidance about maintaining the school's traditional character through careful admission management. 6 months later, Maya stood proudly in the auditorium of Lincoln Middle School, a diverse public institution with an outstanding reputation for academic excellence and genuinely inclusive community values. Marcus had not only been enthusiastically accepted into their gifted program but was already flourishing in ways that would never have been possible in the toxic environment she had encountered at Prestridge Academy. Mom, Marcus said as they walked to their car after his first academic competition victory, his face glowing with confidence, "I'm really glad things worked out the way they did. The kids here actually care about learning and supporting each other, not just showing off their family's money or connections." Maya squeezed her son's hand, feeling deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with personal vindication. The federal investigation into Prestridge Academy was still ongoing, and she knew the final report would mandate significant changes to how private schools across the state operated. More importantly, dozens of other families had courageously come forward with their own experiences of discrimination, and many of their children were now thriving in more welcoming educational environments. The impact of the Prestridge Academy case extended far beyond one elite institution in one wealthy community. It became a powerful national reminder that discrimination often conceals itself behind impressive facades, prestigious reputations, and institutional tradition. It demonstrated that meaningful change requires more than good intentions and private promises, but active federal oversight, public accountability, and serious consequences for violations. Most significantly, it proved that sometimes the person you underestimate, dismiss, or discriminate against might be exactly the individual with the power and authority to ensure that justice is served and systematic reform occurs. Maya Johnson had walked into Prestridge Academy as an optimistic parent, seeking the best possible education for her beloved son. She emerged as a catalyst for transformation across an entire educational system that had operated with impunity for far too long. The paint stains on her blouse that had triggered such contempt and racist assumptions had come from teaching art to children who had been abandoned and forgotten by society. Those same innocent marks became powerful symbols of service, compassion, and the authentic values that truly excellent educational institutions should strive to embody. In the end, Prestridge Academy learned that genuine excellence isn't measured by exclusivity, tradition, or the social status of enrolled families. Real excellence is demonstrated by how an institution treats every person who walks through its doors, regardless of their race, appearance, or the prejudiced assumptions others might make about their worth and potential. But the story doesn't end with individual consequences. Within weeks of the initial media coverage, the ripple effects began spreading throughout the educational landscape. The hashtag movement for educational justice gained momentum as parents across the country began sharing their own experiences with discrimination at elite schools. What had started as one woman's fight for her son became a national reckoning with systematic exclusion in American education. The Department of Education, under mounting public pressure, announced a comprehensive review of federal funding and tax-exempt status for private schools with patterns of discriminatory admission practices. Senator Patricia Williams soon announced she was drafting legislation requiring all private schools receiving any form of government benefit to undergo mandatory civil rights audits. In early press coverage, the proposal was informally nicknamed the Maya Johnson Educational Equity Act. Over the following months, it went through hearings and committee debate, gradually attracting bipartisan interest as lawmakers sought to align themselves with a story that had captured national attention. For Maya personally, the aftermath brought both vindication and unexpected challenges. Her promotion to regional director came with expanded authority to investigate discrimination complaints across multiple states, but it also meant increased scrutiny of her own work and heightened expectations from communities desperate for someone to champion their causes. The paint stains on her blouse, initially a source of shame in that discriminatory environment, had become symbols of authentic service that she wore with quiet pride. Marcus, meanwhile, flourished at Lincoln Middle School in ways that exceeded even Maya's highest expectations. His science fair project on renewable energy solutions for low-income communities won the state championship, earning him a full scholarship to a prestigious summer program at MIT. More importantly, he had developed a deep understanding of social justice that would shape his character for life. When interviewed by a local news station about his mother's experience, he spoke with a maturity that impressed viewers nationwide. "My mom taught me that real strength isn't about fighting back when someone hurts you," he said, looking directly into the camera with the confidence of someone raised by a mother who demanded excellence. "Real strength is making sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to other people. That's what she did, and that's what I want to do with my life." The transformation at Prestridge Academy itself proved more challenging than anyone anticipated. The new administration, led by Dr. James Rodriguez, a respected educator with extensive experience in diversity and inclusion, faced the Herculean task of rebuilding an institutional culture that had been systematically exclusionary for over a century. Enrollment plummeted by 60% as families fled the negative publicity, forcing massive budget cuts and staff reductions. The few families who remained represented a fascinating cross-section of American values. Some stayed because they genuinely believed in the possibility of transformation and wanted to be part of positive change. Others remained simply because they had invested too much financially and emotionally to walk away. The result was an uncomfortable tension between those committed to reform and those who secretly longed for a return to the old ways of doing business. Dr. Rodriguez implemented sweeping changes designed to address the systematic problems Maya had exposed. Admission criteria were completely overhauled to emphasize objective academic metrics rather than subjective evaluations of cultural fit. Staff underwent extensive training in unconscious bias and cultural competency. The school established partnerships with community organizations serving underrepresented populations, creating pipelines for talented students who might never have considered applying previously. Perhaps most significantly, the school's mission statement was rewritten from the ground up. The old motto, "Where leaders are made," was replaced with "Where every child achieves excellence through equity and inclusion." The change wasn't merely cosmetic, it represented a fundamental shift in institutional values that would guide decision-making for years to come. The financial settlement Maya ultimately received was substantial enough to ensure Marcus's college education and establish a foundation dedicated to fighting educational discrimination. But she insisted that the money wasn't the point. Real change came through the federal oversight agreement that would monitor Prestridge Academy's practices for the next decade, ensuring that the reforms weren't merely temporary public relations gestures. 2 years after her visit to Prestridge Academy, Maya received an unexpected phone call that brought the story full circle. Dr. Rodriguez was calling to invite her to speak at the school's first annual Social Justice and Educational Equity Symposium. The irony wasn't lost on her that an institution which had once treated her with such contempt now wanted to celebrate her as an inspiration to their students. "Dr. Johnson," Rodriguez said during their conversation, "I know this request might seem strange given everything that happened, but I think it would be powerful for our students to hear from someone who turned a moment of injustice into lasting change. We're not the same institution that failed you so badly, and we want our students to understand that real leadership sometimes means standing up to systems that seem too powerful to challenge." Maya considered the invitation carefully before accepting. When she arrived at Prestridge Academy for the symposium, the changes were immediately apparent. The student body was genuinely diverse, the staff reflected various backgrounds and perspectives, and the atmosphere felt welcoming rather than exclusionary. The building was the same, but the soul of the institution had been fundamentally transformed. Standing at the podium in the same auditorium where portraits of exclusively white alumni had once dominated the walls, Maya looked out at an audience that would have been unimaginable during her first visit. Students of every race, ethnicity, and economic background listened intently as she shared her story. 2 years ago, I walked into this building as a parent, hoping to find the best educational opportunity for my son, she began, her voice carrying the authority that had made her such an effective federal inspector. I left as an advocate for every child who deserves to be judged by their character and potential rather than their race or economic circumstances. The question and answer session that followed revealed how profoundly the student body had internalized lessons about justice and equity. A young African American girl asked how to respond when facing discrimination in her community. A white student wondered how he could use his privilege to support classmates from different backgrounds. Their questions demonstrated a level of social consciousness that the old Prestridge Academy would never have fostered. After the symposium, Maya was approached by Mrs. Elizabeth Carter, the parent who had intervened on her behalf during that first traumatic visit. Now serving on the school's reformed board of trustees, Mrs. Carter had become one of the most vocal advocates for the changes that transformed the institution. "Dr. Johnson," she said, tears visible in her eyes, "I want you to know that speaking up that day was one of the most important things I've ever done. Watching what you accomplished after facing such terrible treatment taught me that silence in the face of injustice makes us all complicit. This school is better because you refuse to accept what happened to you as normal." Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Mrs. Carter, your intervention that day gave me hope when I had almost given up. It showed me that not everyone at this institution shared those prejudices. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to speak up." Their conversation reminded Maya that change often requires unexpected alliances between people who might seem to have little in common. Mrs. Carter's willingness to challenge discriminatory behavior, even when it benefited her own family's position, had been crucial in creating the opening for justice to ultimately prevail. As Maya prepared to leave Prestridge Academy after the symposium, she reflected on how dramatically the trajectory of her life and Marcus's future had been altered by a few paint stains and the prejudiced assumptions they triggered. The volunteer work that had led to those stains continued to be central to her identity, but now it carried additional meaning as a symbol of values that transcended race and economic status. Walking toward her car, Maya noticed a young girl sitting alone on a bench, tears streaming down her face. The child looked to be about Marcus's age, her school uniform impeccable but her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Maya approached gently. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" The girl looked up, revealing dark eyes filled with pain. "Some kids were saying things about how I don't belong here, that my family only got in because of charity." Her voice cracked. "They said I should go back to where I came from." Maya's heart clenched. Even with all the institutional changes, the real work of changing hearts and minds was still ongoing. She sat down beside the girl. "What's your name?" "Sophia Martinez." "Well, Sophia, I want you to know something very important. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Your intelligence, your character, your potential, those things aren't determined by what other people think about you. They come from inside you." Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But what if they're right? What if I can't keep up?" Maya thought of Marcus, thriving at his diverse school where excellence was celebrated regardless of background. "Can I tell you a secret? The most successful people I know aren't the ones who never faced obstacles. They're the ones who used those obstacles to become stronger and more determined." She pulled out her phone and showed Sophia a photo of Marcus receiving his science fair trophy. "This is my son. 2 years ago we tried to enroll him at this very school. We were treated terribly because of the color of our skin and some paint stains on my clothes. But you know what? That experience taught us both something valuable, that our worth isn't determined by other people's prejudices." Sophia's eyes widened as she recognized Maya from the assembly. "You're Dr. Johnson. You're the reason things changed here." Maya smiled. Things changed because a lot of brave people decided to stand up for what's right. And now it's your turn to be brave. Every time you excel in class, every time you treat others with kindness, every time you refuse to let someone else's ignorance define you, you're making this place better for the next student who looks like you. As Sophia's posture straightened with renewed confidence, Maya realized this conversation encapsulated why her fight had been worth it. Real change wasn't just about policy reforms and federal oversight. It was about moments like this, when a young person learned that they had the power to define their own worth. The broader impact of Maya's experience continued to ripple through the educational landscape in ways both large and small. Educational discrimination cases across the country began referencing the Prestidge Academy settlement as precedent for more aggressive federal enforcement. Law schools added her case to their civil rights curricula as an example of how systematic discrimination operates in contemporary America. Maya's story also inspired a new generation of education professionals to see their work as fundamentally connected to social justice. Applications to graduate programs in educational policy and administration surged as young people sought to follow her example of using expertise and authority to challenge unfair systems. The paint-stained blouse, which Maya had initially considered discarding after that humiliating day, now hung framed in her office as a reminder of how easily superficial judgments could mask deeper truths. Visitors often asked about it, providing opportunities to share the story and its lessons about appearance versus character. Marcus, now in high school, had grown into a confident young man who understood both his privileges and responsibilities. His experiences had given him a unique perspective on justice and equality that influenced every aspect of his life. When he applied to colleges, his essay about watching his mother transform discrimination into systematic change moved admissions officers to tears. "I learned from my mother that courage isn't the absence of fear," he wrote in his application to Harvard. "It's the decision to do what's right even when you're afraid. It's refusing to let other people's limitations become your own. Most importantly, it's using whatever power you have to make sure the next person doesn't face the same obstacles you did." The admissions officer who read his essay later said it was one of the most powerful pieces of writing she had encountered in 20 years of reviewing applications. Marcus was accepted with a full scholarship and a personal note from the dean expressing the university's honor at welcoming someone with such character and perspective. At Prestidge Academy, the transformation continued to evolve. Dr. Rodriguez faced ongoing challenges as some community members resisted the changes, but enrollment had begun to recover as word spread about the school's genuine commitment to excellence and inclusion. The new student body consistently outperformed state averages on standardized tests, proving that diversity enhanced rather than compromised academic achievement. The school's partnership with the local children's shelter, where Maya had been volunteering when she got those fateful paint stains, became one of its most celebrated programs. Students tutored children, organized art therapy sessions, and raised funds for educational supplies. What had once been seen as evidence of Maya's unworthiness became the foundation for some of the school's most meaningful community service. 3 years after her traumatic visit, Maya returned to Prestidge Academy one final time for a different kind of ceremony. The school was dedicating a new scholarship fund in her honor, providing full tuition support for academically gifted students from underrepresented communities. Standing before the assembled crowd, Maya felt a complex mixture of emotions. "When I first walked through these doors," she said, her voice carrying across the silent auditorium, "I was just a mother who wanted the best education possible for her son. I never imagined that day would change not just my family's life, but the lives of countless other families facing similar challenges." She paused, looking out at faces that reflected the full spectrum of American diversity, but transformation rarely happens the way we expect. Sometimes the most important changes come from our most painful experiences. Sometimes we have to be willing to fight battles we never wanted to fight in order to create opportunities for people we'll never meet. Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. "The paint stains on my blouse that day weren't just evidence of volunteer work, they were evidence of values, compassion, service, the belief that every child deserves opportunity regardless of their circumstances. Those same values are what I see in this transformed institution today." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Maya was already thinking about the work still ahead. Despite the progress at Prestridge Academy, she continued to receive calls from parents experiencing discrimination at schools across the country. Each case reminded her that institutional change, while important, was only part of the solution. The deeper work of changing hearts and minds would take generations. As Maya drove home from the ceremony, she thought about the unexpected journey that had begun with a simple desire to enroll her son in school. The discrimination she had faced was painful and wrong, but it had also revealed her own strength and purpose in ways that comfortable acceptance never could have. Her phone rang as she pulled into her driveway. It was a mother from California, calling about problems her daughter was facing at an elite prep school. The woman's voice shook as she described encounters that sounded heartbreakingly familiar. "Dr. Johnson," the woman said, "I heard about what you did, and I was wondering if you could help me figure out what to do. My daughter is brilliant, but they're treating her like she doesn't belong there. I don't know if I have the strength to fight the way you did." Maya smiled, recognizing the fear and determination in the woman's voice. "You have more strength than you know," she said softly, "and you're not fighting alone. Let me tell you about some resources that might help, and then we can talk about next steps." As Maya settled into her home office to begin another conversation about justice and courage, she reflected on how her personal trauma had evolved into a calling that connected her with parents and students across the nation. The paint stains that had once made her feel ashamed now represented a badge of honor, proof that real worth comes not from meeting other people's expectations, but from staying true to your own values even when doing so requires tremendous courage. The story that had begun in discrimination and pain had transformed into something beautiful, a reminder that individual acts of courage, supported by community and sustained by determination, could indeed change the world one student, one family, one institution at a time. Maya Johnson had learned that sometimes the most important battles choose us rather than the other way around. But she had also discovered that when we fight those battles with integrity, courage and love, we become part of something much larger than ourselves. A continuing struggle for justice that connects past, present, and future in the sacred work of ensuring that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Dr. Maya Johnson had delivered that lesson at no charge to Prestridge Academy. The cost of learning it would be paid forward by every student who benefited from the changes her courage had created, creating ripples of justice that would extend far beyond what any one person could measure or imagine.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.